Hello everyone, it is Monday, October the 8th, 2018, about 11:45 in the afternoon. And we are in Ohio at this point, if you're just now picking up. We're in Ohio. What's the city we're in?
Dayton.
Dayton, Ohio. And I'm here with
food, water, and
my folks. My mom and dad. Say hello.
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 We are going into. You're better with this. What are the details? What's the long version of the name of this place?
This is the National Museum of the United States Air Force.
National Museum of the United States Air Force. I just think of it as an aerospace museum owned by the Air Force. So that's what we're going to be doing this entire day. I am probably going to take a lot of videos, so if you don't like aviation history, you might want to skip this video because that's all it's going to be for this one and probably the next one after it. Alright, so we are going in and they're advertising the Memphis Belle.
Yeah, it came in May, so
it's been here since May.
Yeah, since
So we got 4 hangars, 22 acres, pretty much chronological. From the early years, World War I, World War II, Korea, Southeast Asia, early Cold War, late Cold War, B-2 bomber, the only one we have on display any place, B-1 bomber, SR-71, the fastest jet in the world. Back rockets and missiles, you go either way. If you go to the left-hand side, there's an elevator right here, go to the second floor, good views of both galleries, some tables and chairs, and a snack bar open at 4:30. We call it the refueling cafe. So, it's a good place to refuel. 10 presidential planes, we're the only ones that have them. 4 of the big ones you can go through, including Kennedy's Air Force One, Eisenhower, Roosevelt, some Trumans. I remember Roosevelt had polio, didn't want anybody to know it, so he had an elevator built in so you can see the elevator. And then 3 cargo airplanes, and this is a Hanoi taxi. They brought the first POWs back from Vietnam, John McCain, that group.
One I am geeking out about a little bit right here. This is the first display, of course. It's not the first powered air flight because that one they laid down in and controlled it with their hips. But
this is a military flight.
This is a little different, and it's not one of the ones that was flown by the Wright brothers. This is, as they put it, an exact reproduction. But the engine, the sprockets, and the props were donated by the Wright family. The engine by Orville Wright himself, and the chain, sprockets, and props are all by the heirs of the Wright family. So this is not an exact Wright brothers plane, but all of that machinery back there and the engine and everything was indeed Wright brothers. Just a few months before I started my vlog, one of the things that I did was when I did that Blueberry Festival, I was in North Carolina, I drove there while listening to a biography of the Wright brothers, and then took an extra day to go to Kitty Hawk and see the memorial and the very first airstrip out there in Kitty Hawk. And they had a hurricane came through and completely demolished the building where they had their replica flyer, so I didn't get to see it, and I was a little disappointed. But here, look at this. This is like all the Wright brothers memorabilia that you would ever want to see. Lots of pictures and accounts, an actual Wright brothers bike, and that's how they funded their research, is they had a successful bike building business, bike shop. This is one of the Wright brothers actual bikes right here. There's another one up here. This is a little more advanced later on. 1900, and this was when the Wright brothers were just experimenting with gliders, and they chose Kitty Hawk because of its constant wind, gentle slopes, and sandy areas that they felt like they could crash land in without major bodily harm. Everything they did was planned out. Here's where they advanced the model a little bit more, and they were still using gliders, and then a little more advanced here, and this is over a period of years. Each year they would take weeks off and come out to Kitty Hawk and experiment more and more. Here's one of their actually manned gliders. And then
That's when they realized
Further on.
that their tables were wrong.
Yeah, at some point they realized that a lot of the tables were wrong. The ones that were given to them by the even earlier glider flyers, their mathematics were wrong. So they actually went back to the drawing board and they used a box fan, and they used it to make a wind tunnel, and they started experimenting with different angles for wing structure using bent bandsaw blades. And they were high school dropouts. So in America, a couple of high school dropouts with a box fan and bent bandsaw blades created the tables that we still use today for aviation, and were the very first powered air flight flyers. And here, is this the actual box, the wind tunnel? Or is it a replica?
It says replica.
It's okay, so this is a replica of the wind tunnel that they used in the back of their bike shop to create the tables. The only advancements that aviation has done to the Wright brothers tables was they didn't account for air becoming thinner the higher you go up. But that's understandable because nobody had even been up that far before or flown that high before, because they were the first ones. So that was really the only air that they had in their tables. Yeah, here we've got some of the demonstrations that the Wrights were doing. This was after they moved the whole operation to Ohio and put wheels on the flyers, refined the wing warping, and yeah, and then they finally did some demonstrations. They got enough people to actually believe that they had a flying machine, and they were able to do a demonstration. The very first public demonstration done by the Wright brothers was actually in France, because in America they had so many frauds claiming that they had powered air flight that they just didn't believe them. And so the French were the first ones to say, yeah, come give us a demonstration. But it was really only a matter of weeks after that the other Wright brother, Wilbur I think, went to DC and did a public demonstration in America to really show the first flying machine. This broken prop right here is from a propeller that looked like this one, but it was involved in this actual crash. It was the very first death of a passenger, and this was passenger Selfridge.
It was given to
Selfridge. Orville recovered, did not die. Neither of the Wright brothers died from plane crashes, but Orville recovered and had kind of like bad joint problems and walked with like a limp for the rest of his life. That's where these broken props are from. These are actual pieces involved in that crash. And this is a
9-cylinder rotary engine.
Yeah, it's a kind of a cutaway where you can see the inner workings of a common airplane engine used in World War I, and the engine itself spun. You can actually see the bearings and the sprockets inside there, right there.
The crankshaft was held in place,
Yeah.
and the propeller was actually attached to the engine block, and the engine block spun.
The engine blocks. I bet that made for a lot of vibration.
No, it was actually if it was balanced well, it was very smooth.
Really?
Yeah.
We're getting into World War I, the time of Eddie von Rickenbacker, only surviving American ace of aces. Well, I thought he did the Sopwith Camel.
No, that's the English version. He did
Oh,
not do that.
he did not. He didn't fly in that one.
Remember the first one that he flew was real bad about the wing tearing off on the top?
Right. Yeah. It's if
Okay,
he
this
pulled,
is a
if he pulled
Newport.
up too hard.
This is what the one
The
was.
Newport. This is
Yeah,
the kind
and
that
then
Eddie von
and then
Rickenbacker
the
flew.
second one that he flew was this one back over here.
Oh, that's right. The Spad. So
It was a better plane. And it didn't, the wings were, the top was metal on it.
So that top wing, he could pull up a lot sharper with this one. The giant balloons that were used for taking photos of the enemy, they were big, tempting targets for the aircrafts, because a lot of times they were filled with hydrogen, so if you shot them enough with like tracer rounds, they would catch fire, and so they called it balloon busting. There you have it, the hat in the ring logo that Eddie von Rickenbacker created. And it was, you know, it was taken from that old phrase that when you were to join a fight, you were to throw your hat in the ring. And so he made it an Uncle Sam's hat in a ring, and that was his squadron, the Hat in the Ring squadron. Yeah, he's just crashed, and you're gonna yell at him about wrecking the plane. The dude just crashed. My goodness. This is the BT-12. Nicely done airfield models they have here. Some of these World War II single-engine fighter planes. Some of the earliest attempts at a helicopter. This one was more of a combination airplane and helicopter. The engine itself propelled the airplane, did not power the rotors. However, unlike helicopters, the engine did not power the gyro rotor. Instead, aerodynamic forces made the autogyrator rotate spin while the engine propelled the aircraft. Now, their attempt was to make an airplane that could do short takeoffs and landings, but all this overcomplication really kind of defeated the purpose, and there were very few of these made. We're now getting into World War II. And this is a Zero, Japanese Zero. Same kind of planes that bombed Pearl Harbor. E-39Q. This one, it was unique in that the engine is right there in the center. So the drive shaft actually went through the middle of the plane. The pilot sat somewhere right here. And here's the shells for the machine gun, and somehow they got the machine gun to fire right through the center of the props. So there's your barrel right there, coming right out the end. Now Chuck Yeager in his book talked about being trained in one of these, and he did not like it. He hated it because the engine being in the middle kind of messed with the weight, so that if you got into a tailspin, it was incredibly difficult to get back out of it. The B-24D has this gunner station right there in the front. 3 different guns at your disposal. All that glass around you, making you feel like you're suspended in midair. Takes us to the Memphis Belle, the plane that was advertised above the front door as a big centerpiece, a highlight, a newest edition kind of thing. So I'm going to read about it and find out what the significance of this plane is. So the significance is that this B-17 bomber Flying Fortress is not a replica. This is a restored actual B-17 from World War II that flew 25 different missions over Europe. And it came to the museum in 2005. Then after many years of meticulous restoration, it is now on display as of May this year. So there you have it. You guys might recognize this plane from some iconic movies such as Heavy Metal, when there was some zombies that came to life and started eating the crew on the inside, as well as Dr. Strangelove, when, what was his name, Risky Business, actually rode an atomic bomb out of the bottom of one of these. The gunnery station up in the nose was not the only gunner turret, if you will. There's another one here in the rear facing turret. You can see a lot of the inspiration for Star Wars in this iconic plane as well. More guns here. There was a reason why they called it the Flying Fortress. There's even another turret above the cockpit section. Right there. Over 12,000 of these were made to fight in World War II. The P-51 Mustang here, this is the preferred plane of Chuck Yeager. He flew in World War II, but... Oh, so he flew this one as well?
Oh yeah, he flew them, but this one was known for its superior ruggedness. It had a huge armament. It was very big and very heavy. It had a supercharged radial engine in it, which is very unique.
Had a lot more armament around the cockpit, but the Mustang could go at least 20 miles an hour faster than the
P-47D.
P-47D, the Thunderbolt. This aisle right here is a good demonstration of the immensity of this museum and the fact that as many videos as I'm taking, as long as this turned out to be, I could spend a day in each one of these 4 buildings and still not be able to read everything and show you everything that there is to see. So with as long as this video turns out to be, just understand it's still cut short. The amazing thing about this plane right here was this was a glider, had no engine in it. It was tethered to the back of a larger plane, and then it was filled with troops, and they would just drag them behind the larger plane with somebody guiding it, of course, to make sure it didn't completely go out of control. But yeah, this was basically a troop transport for the sky. Even cooler, whenever these gliders were picked up, they developed a way that they could just put the glider into a field like this with a catch rope suspended, and then a C-47 would fly low over it and lower a hook and snatch the glider off the ground and yank it into the air mid-flight and start the transport. Now we come to the B-29, also known as the boxcar, the Boeing B-29 Super Fortress. And here it is, probably most famous for turning the tide of World War II when it dropped its payload, the Fat Man, atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yeah, that was one of them there, and then the other one. We just got out of the museum, the giant 22-acre museum right over there. They're gracious enough to give us some picnic tables. So we're out here having some actually rather healthy snacks. Well, it's more of a lunch, really. So I'm going to go ahead and use this opportunity to bring this one to a close. This is probably going to be 2 or 3 parts. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is the end of part 1. So please don't forget to smash that like button, leave comments and questions and suggestions. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon to start receiving notifications. And I will see you again in the next one.
Bye.